Ladies and gentlemen, a young teenager has alleged that she was sexually abused multiple times in Kerala's Pathanamthitta. From so-called friends she made via social media, particularly Instagram, is what police officials are saying, to her real-time classmates that police sources have confirmed as possibly co-athletes as well as coaches. A probe is on. 43 accused have been arrested. According to the top investigating officer whom I've spoken to, it was the educational institution along with other spaces that were used for the heinous crimes over and over again. Among the accused are also other teenagers, as I said, her own classmates. The family was from an underprivileged background. The father struggled with addiction, and the mother, when told of these details, was wondering how would she tell the father. Breakdown of a family protection net. But in this case, the violations have been multiple. Ladies and gentlemen, our focus tonight is on this because this frankly isn't only a Kerala story. Instead, is our reality. In fact, look at this. In Nagpur, a 45-year-old psychologist cum personality counselor has been arrested for allegedly sexually exploiting and blackmailing at least 50 students at his clinic and residential unit for over 15 years. Sexual abuse and rape as a crime has only compounded. With unbridled social media access, often friends turning into offenders in increasing account, say police officials. While there are strict rules like POCSO, navigating them through the social media network by itself is complex. Top cops say many times the sexual offenders often delete their account and trace right after or even before the act of violation, violating a person. And remember, the same POCSO Act deems all genders under 18 years of age incapable of giving consent to sex, making them all victims of sexual assault. And of course, remember, the sexual assault allegations by Indian wrestlers and several athletes raising some very important questions on repeated systemic failures, not just in India, but even abroad. Before we go any further, my colleague Arpita Ajay Kumar sends us these details after speaking to several officials in Pathanamthitta. Let's listen in.
An 18-year-old girl has allegedly said that she was sexually being assaulted for over 5 years by over 60 people. This is a shocking incident that has come to light from Kerala's Pathanamthitta district, and it has sent shockwaves across the nation. She was 13, a minor, when this incident happened. Now, this incident came to light when there was a counseling session that was held by an NGO in her community. The survivor opened up about this horrifying incident to the counselor. Considering the seriousness and importance of this issue, the counselor then referred her to CWC, Child Welfare Committee. The CWC took her initial statement and sent her to a psychologist where a counseling session was held. And during that counseling session, this 18-year-old girl took names of 62 people who sexually assaulted her. Now, this is a very sad and shocking incident that has come from Kerala. Now, CWC sources have told me that this survivor is an athlete and her culprits allegedly involve coaches, classmates, co-athletes and many more. Police have so far arrested 43 people, and out of which 3 of them are minor. Police sources have told me that few of the culprits are in foreign countries, and they have issued a lookout notice and they will arrest these culprits as soon as possible. Police sources have also told me that the girl has named 62 people, but the total number of accused stands at 58. The Pathanamthitta police has formed a special investigating team which is now headed by DIG Ajita Begum. All eyes are now on her investigation, and we need to wait and watch what more shocking details will come out in coming days.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Arpita, for giving us those details. Let me just go to my panelists at this point. PK Jain, retired senior IPS officer, joins us. Dr. Bhavna Barmi, child and clinical psychologist, also joins us. Brinda Adige, who's an activist, and Sanjay Singh, who's a child rights activist. Both of them join us at this point, as well as Dr. Sunita Godara, who's an Asian marathon champion for 1992. Thank you very much, all of you, for your time. A hugely worrying development that we really are discussing, but something that's increasingly our reality. PK Jain, if I can come to you first at this point. PK Jain, it is a complex case to really look at, but as you look at how it's unfolded, just the level of lapses, and possibly at every place where there should have been a check, there should have been a red herring, all of that has been crossed. It's just shocking to see how vulnerable and exploited a teenager has been left.
Snehaji, namaskar. Thank you very much. See, my only lament in this case is that all these things come to the police at a rather late stage. It all, first of all, reflects in the immediate peers, friends, family, and then maybe the counselor, and then it comes to the police at the last resort. And many a times the perpetrators and even the institutions, they try to hide these facts. Unfortunately, in this case, it was a dysfunctional family. The father, as you say, was already addicted, and the mother was not having guts to speak out to him. And the child, at what stage? At age of 13, she was first exploited, and by people whom she probably placed trust in. It breaks my heart. Law is law. Now 43 people have been arrested. More arrests will be taking place. But unfortunately, compiling of evidence in this case would be a Herculean task for the investigating officer, for the simple reason that the things have been happening over the last 5 years. She may have certain details, but those details have to be put in proper perspective. Evidence, each case wise, has to be collected as to where, how, when it all happened, has to be probably collated, and then only some kind of a charge sheet can be formulated, and submitted in the court. The only thing I can further say in this case, that see, in this case it was a dysfunctional family. I always keep saying that the children, parents, it is the duty of the parents to treat their children as friends, so that the children can come back home and confide in them as to what is happening to them, instead of trying to hide these facts and be scared of their parents that their athletic career or their career in sports would be over, or they will not be allowed to step out of their homes and all that. So in this case, unfortunately, the coach himself was involved. Class fellows were involved. So it's a horrid story. But legally speaking, a lot of work will have to be done by the SIT. I hope they do a good job. You would remember the case of Rivanna, who was involved in a series of rapes. Now the person has been, the High Court has stayed his framing of charge sheet against him. I mean, where are we going? I mean, if somebody can afford some good lawyers, who have a face value with the courts, they immediately go and get some relief. In a case which was again a very horrid replica of this kind of a case which happened now, there, of course, the women were all grown up and they were being, targeted. But there also the courts have given him a long they have given a long leeway to get away with it. I mean, today his charges have not been framed against him.
Right.
So unfortunately, there's an insensitivity at every level. I'm very sure that even if this girl would have gone to the police, she and her mother, they would have been shooed away. Unfortunately, the system is like this. So you have resistance at the police level, you have resistance at the administration level, and you have resistance even at the courts level. So, I mean, somewhere, I think we have to look within ourselves. We have
In fact,
to look
I
within
did
at the
speak
society.
PK Jain to the DIG in this particular case. And the DIG did tell me that, these are in this particular case, the survivor has very clearly documented everything. She's written it down. She has all the details of it all. So they are hoping they'll be able to build a very strong case. But you do raise some very important concerns. Sanjay Singh, if I can come in. Sanjay Singh, it all seems to have started from social media, and it involves classmates, possibly athletes, coaches. All of this is purview to the probe right now, Sanjay Singh. Are you willing to see this as one-off case, or are there overarching concerns in this?
No, if you know, there was a survey done by Government of India. 53.3% children in India is sexually abused. And this is very, very shocking, you know. That means every second child in India is sexually abused. It's not one-off case. There are many cases that are not reported. If you're thinking it of a dysfunctional family, no. This doesn't restrict to dysfunctional family. It happens everywhere. Every nook and corner of India, every household we are talking about, this is a very, very serious thing that we don't talk about, you know. The thing is, we brush under the carpet that, okay, if something happens in house, nobody talks about it. So there are parents, they all say, no, okay. There are, because there are, what do you call, the perpetrators are relatives. They're very close relatives. So that's the problem we face, you know. Here, what we are seeing here
relatives
is the
or known
manifestation
acquaintances?
of the same thing, you know. Here, the child was not able to speak to anyone. Yeah, known acquaintance, of course. So that's what we are talking about here, because the child is not able to speak to anyone. That's the problem we are facing. That's why we need to encourage children that, okay, in case of anything happening to you, anybody approaching to you, any wrong way, you should speak out to someone you trust, you know. That is what is important. And this kind of awareness is very, very crucial. And we don't talk about it. We don't care about it. Even in schools now, some of the schools are now opening up. They started talking about it. But it is very, very important, and we need to talk about it. And if you're talking about every single child in India,
Singh, allow me to interrupt
what kind
you.
of society
You've
we are
made
talking
a very,
about?
very important data point, and I want you to delve onto it a little bit. You are saying 53% children in India have been sexually abused. Can you interpret this for us? Can you break this down for us? What does this mean? It is even horrifying to be listening to this.
Yeah, that was done by Government of India 2007. That was a committee formed, and that was a survey done across India. And that came out to be 53.3%. And that is Government of India data. And the kind of data we collected, that is much more higher, you know, because that is Government of India data. If you talk about, and there are cases, you will find zones where you will find 90% of children are sexually abused. So we have done various surveys in different zones of India. So it varies, you know. It's not necessary that every zone will have all the children abused, you know. So that this is very, very shocking, and we need to talk about it. That's why that's what I am raising this issue. 53.3% is a Government of India data. It's not my data. This is Government of India data.
Right. Dr. Bhavna Barmi, if I can get you in. Dr. Bhavna Barmi, help us to understand this a bit. Now, there is a teenager who has been exploited at multiple levels, not just at multiple levels, several times. What is the psyche, particularly for somebody who has been exploited multiple times? How does one break through that psyche of exploitation?
You know, I think these kind of incidents, and this especially, is deeply shocking and distressing. And it forces us to confront very uncomfortable truths about psychological, cultural, and systemic failures of our society at large. It is definitely a harrowing reflection of what we have normalized and allowed to perpetuate under layers of whether it's casteism, whether it is vulnerability of the underprivileged, whether it is patriarchy. And what I would say psychologically is it is a collective apathy towards human dignity. What have we developed as a psychological society? Very important to understand that despite technological and educational advancements that we boast of, our moral fabric remains fractured. So we've fostered probably a psychological society that normalizes oppression. Discrimination based on caste and gender is still deeply ingrained, particularly in
But
the
how do you
marginalized
break that?
communities or the
How do you
underprivileged
break that
communities
chain?
of our
Because
Dalit.
what seems to be emerging in this case, Bhavna Barmi, is the fact, and a very important underlying principle, that under POCSO, consent under 18 is inconsequential. Under 18, nobody can give consent to sex. And in case like that, if you are mired, quote unquote trapped, quote unquote exploited, quote unquote there's repeated behavior. How does one break the cycle?
One, I think like we were discussing right now, we need to promote more awareness and education, starting at the family level, where there needs to be a fostering of an open communication, at least with one closed family member. I think the bond of trust, where there can be a discussion from a needle to a murder, should be that kind of an engagement. At a larger level, I think schools and communities must teach respect for all individuals, regardless of caste, regardless of gender, from a very early age. So, programs on consent, boundaries, growing up right, including mental health, should be mandatory. And when
In
we
this case,
talk about
consent
mental health,
is
and when we talk about
non-existent because this person is,
currently non-existent, but I
has
think
said
it's
she's
so
been
important.
sexually assaulted over 5 years, which means she was well below 18 years of age, and there's no consent. Consent is immaterial in this case. Consent doesn't matter, is inconsequential in this case.
Absolutely, and thereby we need to strengthen legal protections. We need to expedite trials in sexual assault cases and
Right.
ensure strict punishment. We need to expand additionally
Right.
some mental health services to people who are not very comfortable in coming back to the families or to the school authorities to be able to communicate, to be able to express their traumas. We need to train counselors to address these kind of traumas with cultural sensitivities. So basically, it is an empowering of the community, which is very, very important. So as a clinical psychologist, I firmly believe that healing from such kind of traumas or even prevention from such kind of traumas requires both individual as well as systemic efforts. And this case that particularly we've been addressing
Okay.
reflects truly a societal decay that we must address collectively. Healing our society actually is
Okay.
what we need to do. It requires breaking down these barriers of discrimination, fostering more empathy,
All right.
and building systems that prioritize human dignity, especially for our children who will not be able to express
In fact,
themselves. So
the
we also
police
need
has
to
gone
build
ahead
up
and
a
said that they will be
kind
even
of an
getting the
understanding
parents
as adults,
into counseling
understanding.
in this particular case. Valid points, quite honestly. But Dr. Sunita Godara, if I can come in, bring you in at this point. Now, you are also somebody who's been a sports person. You've won laurels for India. The victim in this case, the survivor in this case, is a young athlete, is a teenage athlete for that matter. And here, unfortunately, we see a systemic collapse. We see a systemic collapse of protection. We see a systemic um, a, a systemic failure at all levels, and in fact the system possibly has even become the perpetuators as well. Dr. Sunita Godara, isn't India learning enough? Because when we look at the athletes, there have been several allegations of sexual assault from multiple athletes, from multiple sportswomen. We of course saw several of those protests by our own wrestlers
True.
very recently as well, Dr. Sunita Godara.
So, see, the redressal system or the forums are lacking everywhere. Secondly, this is accidentally has come in forefront. I don't know where all it is happening, everywhere. Now, I'm talking to you as a sports person and about the sports law, which is there on papers, but nobody is following it. See, when these wrestlers case came, that time also I was telling the same thing, that as per our sports law, international sports law, any indecent behavior by anyone, that also, like sexual harassment or abuse, the person should be barred from sports immediately. But nothing has been done so far. And now this case is going on for 5 years. I have my doubts. Maybe people must be knowing it, and now it has come to the light. So at least now sports department must follow the sports rule. Police will take time, judiciary will take time, but in sports, they can follow the sports law, follow the international rule, which is there in written on paper in the commission, and just bar these coaches or the athletes, fellow athletes, those who have done it. just bar them for sports. And once you bar coaches from the sports, means just check them out from the
No, but if you're talking about something like
job.
that, I mean, the
Then
data
only
is
these
pretty
things
sad
will
for that
stop.
matter. There have been multiple allegations. For example, in
It's a rule.
2022,
It's a
you
rule.
had
It's a rule. I'm not saying-
allegations of misconduct
I'm not
against the
saying. It is
cycling
a rule
coach.
in
Allow me,
sports.
ma'am. Allow me just to make these points. 2022, you had a gymnastic coach being accused of misconduct. There have been no arrests at all in that case. Investigation is still going on. So cases come in. There are some places where the coach has been removed. There are some places where no arrest has been made. Investigations are still going on. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, investigations are still going on. So how does the system then work? And then you, of course, have investigation. Then you have the trial.
See, police and judiciary, they take their own time. But in sports, at least a sports department, a sports ministry can take suo motu action. Just immediately chuck them out from the sports arena. In the sense, if they are into job, chuck them out from the job. If they are athletes, they should not be allowed to come in the sports arena. That is an international rule. So why don't they follow it? Same happened when the wrestlers were raising the voice. And you know, these girls, they don't have any counselor. Which stadium, which camp has counselor, lady counselor, where these, if the girls are getting such problems, they go and discuss? Nowhere. That's the problem. Ethics panel, where are they?
Okay.
What
Sanjay
are they
Singh, if I
doing?
can come to
Now,
you. I mean, Dr.
you are
Sunita
talking about
Godara
this
just
case.
laid it
What
threadbare
sports
about
ethics
how
panel is doing?
challenging the environment really is, even when it comes to sports women, established sports women. In this case, it was a teenage athlete. I want to come to you, Sanjay Singh, with a very important point. Social media is a reality in today's country. Children across age have access to social media. Well, of course, the desire to have friends is real at every age for that matter, whether you are a child or an adult. Having friendships, having people who would back you, stand by you, have conversations is hugely important. Now, Sanjay Singh, my question to you is, how and where does one know to draw the lines? Does a child ever know where to draw the lines? What are the big red flags?
So you need to understand, first thing is we need to teach our children, our child, in a sense, if you're thinking in terms of going on social media. Social media is one place, it's like, it's very, very weird zone, because children don't understand where they're heading for. There are like people fishing for children, those are teenagers, they do that, teenagers and young children, that's the problem. They try to woo them, and ultimately they get into their every details, and after they start blackmailing them. And usually children don't understand what is happening with them. They panic, That's the problem we face. So the thing is, we need to make them understand, children, that okay, these are the limits, okay, cyber laws are very strong. But in spite of being laws are being strong, children don't understand. That's what we say. Children, they need to be taught, and it should be made compulsory for each and every child to understand what is their private parts, whom to show your private parts, who can touch your private parts. This is very, very important, and that has to be done in grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, If they understand this from there, and they know if they can be taught about it, then they will be in a position, okay, if you have something is happening like this, you will report to X person, Y person, or Z person. And there is a possibility of complaints, you can complain, there are child line, there are a lot of provision given to children. But children has to be given that kind of confidence, because social media is a menace, in a sense, for children at times. Because bullying to sexual abuse to anything happening, pornography, child pornography, for sure. That is what is happening. And there are people waiting for children. And they want, nymphomaniacs are there. They do try to woo children. So that's the problem we face. But once they get into a trap, they don't know how to get out of it. But if we give that much of confidence to children, look child, here you are, this is the limit. You cannot go beyond that. If somebody is trying to tell you something, don't listen to them, because this is something that can be used against you. So there is a limit up to which, if that has to do with something to do with any organ of yours, you need to be very careful. Like, even private parts I'm talking about.
Brinda Adige, can I just come in to ask you a very important question? As a woman
And
activist,
I'd like to add what
consent is huge. Sir, I'll just get back to you, because Brinda Adige has been waiting very patiently with us. Brinda Adige, as a women's activist, consent is hugely important, but here's a case, and it's important for us to understand. Consent has two aspects to it. One, for those 18 and above. Two, for those 18 and below. For those 18 and below, consent doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It is a crime. It is an act of violation under the POCSO Act. And for those above 18 and above, could you bring just how important consent is in both these aspects as an activist dealing with these cases?
It is very clearly described in the law that anybody below 18, consent is immaterial. You have pointed that out also. Now, that said, we also know even in adults.
What does that mean?
What does
that mean?
Consent is when the other person truly understands and is free to say yes. It is not silence, because that is not accepted as consent. The law is clear that being pushed to a corner, being pushed to a vulnerable situation or a vulnerable position or circumstances that are vulnerable, and in that space the person did not say yes, or for that matter did not say no, does not amount to consent. Consent is something that is freely and expressly said so, done so. That said, let us look at this particular case where this child does not have any space for consent. Even if the child would have said, okay, we don't know for what she may or not have said, but let us assume that is not acceptable, because here it is coaches, so which means they are adults, and these coaches also know that she is in a vulnerable position as an athlete. There have been many times when this case, or probably other cases also, where the home situation is fully known to the coaches. The home situation, the family situation is fully known. So vulnerability over there is so deep that they know she is not going to complain to anybody. And if she does, she will not be allowed to come into that athletic foray anymore. So the coaches have not had any fear. With impunity, they have gone ahead. Probably making friends on Insta is every teenager, every young person's primary ambition, in fact. She might have shared, saying that this has happened to me, thinking they will keep it in confidence and support her. Now, they have also abused that trust that she has placed in them. Now, why did all of this happen and continue to happen is because I do not want to absolve our state agencies. Nobody has come forward where a case has been filed and punishment was certain. Cases are still going on and on and on. So why must we absolve the courts? Why should judges be absolved when there is a fast-track court that is so clearly mentioned since the Verma Commission? Why are judges and courts taking such a long time, dragging their feet? And like the DIG mentioned, Prajwal Revana's case, the court has stopped framing of charges. So if the court stops the job of the police, the enforcer of law, where are you going to complain? Who are we going to say? In this case, of course, we found Mahila Samakya, Kerala, that took the matter up. What we want to ask the courts and the prosecution is, will you set an example? Will this case be the precedent? Because you mentioned in your opening remarks, this is not the first case. There have been several cases. The case in Nagpur, people are absconding over there. How difficult it must be for the child and the family of the child. In this particular case, we know that the family is in a vulnerable position also. But in cases, other cases where there are families who are supporting, how difficult it would be for them. The family has to contend and feel guilty.
Brinda Adige, allow me to interrupt you because I want to ask you another important part, another important aspect of the so many angles that you have brought about. One angle that is, you spoke about the coach. You spoke about the coach being an adult and therefore was clearly violative. What about her peers? Her peers who possibly were her own age, at co-athletes or friends for that matter, who possibly were at the same age, who were possibly minors as well at that time. How does that get handled?
That is always a grey matter where our courts are concerned, because they look at it as even the person who's perpetuating that crime, that rape, is a juvenile, is a minor, and so the punishment is not severe. The punishment also is in the lines of reformation. Now, we also want to understand if any studies have been made whether young people or minors who have been committing crimes after reformation, or the so-called time during that reformation that they might have had up till the age of 18, what has been that follow-up after they come out? Because from cases that we have been following up, we have seen that recidivism is very high, both in adults and in minors. And that means our state agencies do not have the wherewithal to handle that part of it. So maybe the courts, the counselors, the women and child, the civil society organizations will have to converge, come together to say what should be the next course of action when these perpetrators, minor perpetrators, come out after that reformation stage.
Allow me to get to PK Jain at this point. PK Jain, as a former top cop, do you have a perspective which is different from Brinda Adige? I'm asking you this question in context of what is unfolded. In this case, many accused are her peers, and I'm assuming if you look at the 5-year span that she has claimed that she has been sexually assaulted, there would have also been minors who were part of this, her friends, her classmates, her co-athletes, as it were. Now, if that is the case, to the questions that Brinda Adige raises, that of course there's reformation that's required, but how is this, this is not exploratory behavior. This is as much a crime as anything else is, PK Jain.
No, it is as much of a crime, but unfortunately with the juvenile laws in this country, the way they are, the juveniles are always treated with kid gloves. So they get a maximum punishment of 3 years or maybe up to the age of 18 or something like that. And they get away with it. And we have no system, as she has very rightly pointed out, we have no system of keeping a track of the criminals, with the result that a number of sexual offenders, the moment they are out of jail, even if they are child predators, they keep predating over children. If they are rapists, they keep raping women. And yet, and there's another, in the old IPC, there used to be a section 75 that the police should have quoted whenever there's a new case which has come up for hearing. Even that section I have seen in my life was not applied in many cases, which it provides for enhanced punishment in a second case of conviction. But even that particular section in many cases has not been applied, does not get applied. That's why I said in the beginning itself, there are a lot of loopholes at the investigation stage, again at the prosecution stage and at the conviction stage. Unfortunately, everybody sees the incidents from their own viewpoint. The governments come on the defensive. Like in this particular case only, the government would have come on the defensive. They formed a SIT. SIT will do its job, submit a report, submit a charge sheet. See the case of Ajmer, where hundreds of girls were violated and they were exploited. And the government came on the defensive. The case died its own. It's so late in the day that a conviction has taken place. It's unfortunate, but this is the real, fact of life, that every agency comes on the defensive the moment there is a case of this nature and this magnitude. Snehaji.
Right. Well, as we have been discussing here, there's one thing which we just wanted to drive home to our viewers. This is not a Kerala story. In fact, this is a Kerala story that really matters just for one reason. This is an increasing reality before many of our children, and there are stakeholders that should be held responsible, including families. Dr. Sunita Godara, PK Jain, Dr. Bhavna Barmi, Brinda Adige, as well as Sanjay Singh, thank you very much for your time and your perspectives. It's time for a very short break. On the other side, news and updates.